Okay, I wanted to do a video about sort of cheap knockoff Osprey bottles versus the real Osprey bottles. And the problem is that you might buy something like this from a lot of retailers that claim these like real Osprey bottles, or you know, just like the real thing, and they're actually really crap compared to the real ones. So here's a real one. This is a fairly beat up old one. It's actually from 1983 if the label on it is to be believed. Now I don't know if the camera is going to focus on that at all, but it says 1983 there. So let's have a comparison. Now you might be able to tell that the cheaper Osprey bottle is actually smaller. Let me put it in front of the real one for you. And you can probably see that the real one is actually bulkier around the back. If I put the canteens back to back, you can probably see that the real Osprey bottle is actually a lot bigger. Now, there's several problems with this. If you simply just wanted to buy a plastic canteen to hold water in, then maybe these cheapo Osprey bottles would be alright, but in my opinion they're not even for that. So let's have a look at the lid. So firstly, it's got a fake respirator style lid for the drinking tube system, and it doesn't work properly. So if you have a look at that, there's no actual connector in there. So when you get this, obviously you can't use it with a gas mask thing. You'd think, oh, maybe I can. No, you can't use it with a respirator's drinking tube connector. Also, it has an O-ring like that that's very cheap and basic that doesn't quite fit around the bottle. Now what I'm going to do in a minute is fill this up and I'll show you a problem with that O-ring. But it doesn't matter how sort of far you screw it down, even if it's like that or it looks like it should be flush, it's not actually a tight connection, and if I fill that with water you'll see that it will leak. Now the real Osprey bottles, in comparison, I've got the Avon thing on there so you can see there's actually a gas mask's drinking tube connector on there. You notice the O-ring is a different design entirely. The O-ring in this basically sits totally flush like an actual O-ring. Now, here's my biggest gripe with the cheap bottle, other than it also being a cheaper plastic. I don't know if you can see that, but that flexes in fairly easily. This one, you'd need to put a lot more force to cause it to flex. So if I knock them, real Osprey bottle, sounds like that. Cheap one, you kind of like can dent it doing that. It's a lot hollower, a lot cheaper plastic. If you drop this a few times it might crack. You can see the mould lines as well on the cheaper one, are a lot more visible. So my big gripe with it, this is a British Army Avon, the old style drinking canteen cap. Let's say I want to put my Avon drinking connector, because this is meant to be like, you know, the exact real thing, onto the cheap Osprey bottle, right? What we'll find is that, oh look, it's not going to make a flush seal. See that? It basically cross threads on every time. If I try and tighten it really far, see how badly that's connecting? Hopefully that's visible in the video. If I held that upside down to try and use a respirator, my water's going to spray everywhere. So yeah, it cross threads on horribly. Now I've not actually tried a cheap canteen lid on the proper Osprey bottle, so let's do that. Oh look, that doesn't even screw on, it just keeps spinning around. So, what you can establish from this is that the cheap knockoff Osprey bottle doesn't actually, I'll just put its lid thing back down, it doesn't actually, isn't compatible with real Osprey parts, which is a big problem. Because the real canteen, obviously, if you're buying one of these, the reason I bought it was to use for my Avon drinking tube things and the GSR drinking tube thing, it doesn't even do that. So when they say this is an exact replica, it neither holds as much water, this holds about 1 litre, this holds about 1.1, it's made from cheaper, flimsier materials, and it doesn't fit the proper lids, and even with its own lid, like its own proprietary lid, it still leaks. So I'm going to fill them with water now and we'll test the actual, you know, like seals of the O-rings. Okay, so first up, here's our real Type 58 pattern Osprey bottle. And if I squeeze that, hold it upside down, no water is leaking out, the seal is absolutely fine around the top. So, good for that. As I said, plastic feels nice and tough, and it holds about 1.1 litres. I've seen lots of places advertising apparently the real ones and they say only hold 1 litres, but it definitely holds about 1.1. As I put on the scale, set the scale to 0, filled it with water, checked the measurement that way, did the exact same thing with the other bottle, and that other bottle only holds about a litre. This holds just over 1.1. So let's get this one, and it's already leaking everywhere. So this bottle might look alright, but if I tip that upside down, there is going to be water leakage. Now it actually seems fairly good at the moment, but it's already made the bed where I've been laying it on there wet. So let me just try and unscrew the lid a couple of times and put it back on to demonstrate the problem. Now, you can probably see, yeah, there we go. Water spurting out the top there. Not a good seal. Won't do up any tighter than I've got it. Again, it seems to sometimes be alright and sometimes not, so it's an inconsistent seal. So if I take the entire lid off, put the lid back on, so you can see there we go. A problem I've had as well is I've had to correct the O-ring sometimes in the lid, because when I first had it the O-ring wasn't sitting flush, so obviously it was a really bad seal in that case. Let's tighten it again. Yeah, I've got some water spraying out there. If I hold it upside down now, I bet that's going to dribble. There's a little bit of water dribbling out, not loads. But regardless, you wouldn't want something that leaks in your actual canteen bag. So you're getting everything else wet, losing drinking water and soaking all your other stuff through. The real Osprey bottle, I can hold it upside down indefinitely and it'd be fine. I'll also point out, the cheap one obviously didn't come with any pouch or anything, but if I was to try and put the cheap one in a real Osprey pouch, you can maybe hopefully see from this there's going to be a lot of dead space around the bottle. I know the pouches are semi-adjustable as well, but if I'm then to get the real Osprey bottle, as I said, it is actually bigger, put it in proper flush seat with the actual bag. So that is a big difference. So to go over all the reasons why I would not recommend you buy one of the cheaper ones compared to one of the proper ones, is the cheap one holds less water. That might not be a big factor for a lot of people. One of the biggest complaints I have is the lid on it. It has neither the proper screw, so you can't fit NATO bottle caps to it designed to fit these ones. The O-ring in it is really crap. At the moment it seems to be working fairly well. I'm not getting too much leakage, but there has been other times I've done the lid up tight, it seems to be absolutely fine, and all of a sudden water just starts spurting out when you move the bottle. It's cheaper plastic. I would not recommend, dropping this. It looks like it would break. The regular Osprey one is obviously designed with getting bashed about in mind. As I said, this one is from the 80s and it still works. This thing is very new and doesn't work. But yeah, as I was saying, my most egregious fault with it is that it can't take proper NATO bottle caps, and if it's meant to be a replica and it can't take proper bottle caps, that's a big problem. So couple that with a bad O-ring in it, cheaper materials. I assume it's a safe plastic to drink from, but obviously real decent plastic bottles are made from certain types of plastics that are non-toxic or don't break down over time when water's in them. These cheap bottles, I don't even know if I'd guarantee that. As for the markings on the front, they both have the keep away from heat or flame bit on them and the arrow. Obviously that's a knockoff arrow, because normally when you have an arrow like that on a British Army thing, it's like a guarantee of quality, so that's a knockoff one, not a real one. Obviously you'll notice it's missing, that has a cat number on it, you'll notice it's missing the stock number the real Osprey bottles have. So there you go, an old second-hand Osprey canteen from 1983, still works perfectly. Obviously I cleaned it out when I got it, and this new one, manufactured like within a year, already has a lot of faults. But as I said, the big fault is the cheap ones do not take NATO caps, which means it's not even a replica if you can't fit all your respirator drinking tube attachments or like whatever else to them. So there you go. If you're looking at getting one of these, don't ever bother buying one of these crap cheap ones. Spend a bit more, get a decent second-hand actual Osprey bottle, and then clean it out properly, and you've got a much better canteen.